everybody. I'm Amy from BodyFit by Amy, and welcome to the Be Where You Are Today podcast, where we connect with fitness and nutrition experts to help you wherever you are on your journey. Just a quick note before we begin, everything we share today is for educational purposes only. This is not medical advice. We are your knowledgeable friends, fitness and nutrition experts. We are not doctors. We are not pharmacists. So always talk to your healthcare provider before beginning anything new. All right, let's get into it. I am so excited today because I am joined again by Vivian, who is our registered dietitian nutritionist. She runs the BodyFit Athletic Club with me. She is our dietitian here at BodyFit by Amy, and she is an expert in all things nutrition. She has worked in the field of nutrition and public health for many years, specifically in women's health. So excited to have you back, Vivian. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Today, we are talking about peptides. Maybe you've heard of them. If you have been on the internet at all, you most certainly have, and especially in the fitness and nutrition space. It is everywhere. And I want to say what prompted this. One, because we're seeing it everywhere. We're getting a lot of questions in our community. Vivian recently did a blog on peptides. We'll make sure that is linked in the notes below. We're certainly talking about this over in the BodyFit Athletic Club. And I know for me, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that we're seeing it everywhere. And I was noticing it's always a red flag when we see people who are not in the fitness or nutrition space talking about something with a lot of authority about something that is really, at the heart of it, it's a medical thing, right? So when we're seeing these influencers with no background in nutrition, in medicine, talk about something like peptides, I automatically think, okay, I want to dig into this because we're going to get a lot of questions. The other thing that was prompting to me to talk about this is we are seeing those influencers, but I'm also seeing a lot of people that I know and respect in the fitness industry who are talking about peptides, and they're sharing studies and they're talking about research, and they are people with a background in fitness or nutrition. So to me, that's all the more reason to dig into it. A lot of them share a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, but I do think it's worth looking into because this is not just some crazy influencer trend that we're going to see disappear in a couple weeks. People who are actually in the fitness world and serious elite athletes are talking about it. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to really dig into this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very similar to you, right? It seems like every day, every week, every minute, there's another podcast, TikTok video, social media post, wellness clinic ad. It's a big one these days. Influencer testimonial talking about peptides for fat loss, muscle growth, recovery, gut health, anti-aging, hormones, sleep, inflammation, literally everything, it seems like. And look, I get it. I do. The claims are captivating. I understand the appeal. It's exciting. But just like you mentioned, when something starts to sound a little too perfect and suspiciously capable of fixing every single problem known to mankind, maybe we should start asking some questions.
Yeah. And I feel like we both have had those sort of OMG moments. Again, for me, it was seeing people in the fitness industry talking about it and touting it as sort of this magic solution to things that we've talked about for years, muscle strength, recovery, and all of a sudden it's another hack or a shortcut. Did you have one of those moments?
In our community inside the BodyFit Athletic Club, people have been asking, hey, what are your thoughts on peptides? What do you think? And I've been answering, but I think the moment, my oh my gosh, I got to talk about this moment, was coming across an influencer recruiting people to sell peptides. And of course, it was one of those, I know, right? It was one of those classic peptide sales helped pay for this beautiful, amazing, extensive, all-inclusive vacation in Greece. And also there was no shortage of bikini photos and peptides, of course, were 100% responsible for the dream vacation, but also the dream vacation body.
Right. It was all the peptides. It wasn't, good photos. It wasn't anything,
No.
nutrition, fitness, none of that. It was all the
No.
peptides.
No, not genetics. No.
None of it.
No.
Editing. Yeah, all of it.
No. Peptides.
Yep.
10% off with code. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, definitely a red flag there. That leads me to this question, which I would say is kind of one of the most common ones we get, but what even is a peptide? What is a peptide do? So we can say that the sciencey definition is peptides are smaller strings of amino acids linked together by peptide bonds. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. Is that how you would define a peptide?
Exactly. So yes, peptides are short chains of amino acids, and amino acids are the building blocks of protein. I like to think of peptides kind of like a bracelet. So I am actually wearing a beaded bracelet right now. And the way that I like to explain peptides, so the bracelet is the peptides, the beads are the amino acids, and the ligature here, those are the peptide bonds. So this is sort of the visual for how we would describe a peptide. Now, most people are like, okay, and it's a bracelet?
Right.
Okay, I get it. No, I think the bigger question, what people really want to know is, okay, so what do they do then? What does the bracelet do for me?
Yes.
and to answer that, peptides are messengers. They are signaling molecules. That's the best way to describe it. They help communicate instructions throughout your body related to everything. So hormone signaling, immune function, tissue repair, appetite regulation, inflammation, so much more.
I love that explanation. One, because I'm a very visual learner, but it just makes so much sense that is these smaller parts together versus thinking of just a peptide, right? Like we think of like a protein.
Yeah, I think because, I like to be fun. Really how I describe a peptide, yes, signaling molecules to communicate instructions, but basically bossy little gremlins that run around the body delivering specific instructions. Hey, stomach, I need you to ease up on the hunger signals. Hey, immune system, I need you to pay attention over there. Hey, tissue, let's work on repair. Hey, body, release this. Hey, body, do that. That's really what peptides are.
Also a really fun visual to think of bossy little gremlins all throughout my body.
I'm sure they're very nice.
I'm sure they're very nice, but they're bossy. They're getting a job done, right?
Yes. And they have power. Yes, they have power. So when they say do something, the body does listen.
Well, let's talk about the newness of peptides because it feels like something new in the way we're seeing it on social media of, this brand new thing, this, new hack or shortcut or way to, maximize your results. But really, we've been talking about them for longer. I think most people are familiar with collagen peptides. It's another thing that Vivian has written a really great blog on. We'll also make sure that is linked in the comments. A lot of us have been putting them in our coffee or putting them in our smoothies. I sometimes will mix them into my oatmeal. And we've heard about collagen peptides specifically with skincare, right? But also in my lane, joint health. We talk a lot about muscle, but really connective tissue, our ligaments, our tendons, things that adapt a little slower than our muscles. There is some promising research on collagen, and I know I specifically have felt it. Some of my clients have, but we've really been talking about peptides for a long time, a lot longer than, this current phase.
That is so true. And I think people are coming to us like peptides, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like, it's been around forever. Yes, collagen, peptides. So that supplement that many of us have been taking for years, it's been around. Vaccines, certain hormones like oxytocin, insulin, all of those peptides. So not new, but what I think is new, what feels really new to people is the injectable side of this. So the injectable peptides, those are definitely newer. And that's, I think, what's driving a lot of the noise and the craze. And that's, I think, what we're hearing about. And I think that's what a lot of people have questions about.
Right. That's why we're focusing on this today. Let's talk about the naturalness, if that's a word, of peptides, because that is one question that we are being asked constantly. Are peptides natural? And the answer is yes. The human body actually contains over 7,000 naturally occurring peptides. And so they are natural. They occur in our body, but that's where it can get confusing, right?
Yes. The body naturally produces many peptides. And like we talked about before, they are involved in many things like hormone regulation, appetite control, immunity, so many things, healing, tissue repair. Yeah.
Natural, but we can also buy them. So how do we explain that to people, right? What?
Yeah, this is where it gets confusing. So this is where you have to be careful, right? There's a big difference. Yes, your body produces peptides naturally. That's not the same thing as whatever the TikTok guy is selling. It's the exact same thing that my body is producing. Not quite. So, a little science explanation here. When it comes to peptides, we have two types. So we have endogenous peptides and we have exogenous peptides. Oh, what? Don't worry. Endogenous peptides, those peptides are made inside the body. Insulin is actually a perfect example of this. Oxytocin, that hormone that many of us talk about, right? So they are endogenous because our bodies naturally produce it. Then we have the exogenous peptides, or I like to think of endo, inside, exo, exit from the outside. Right. So exogenous peptides, these come from outside the body, and this can include anything. Foods. So if you're having a piece of chicken and it's a protein, it gets broken down into peptides. Hey, so foods, medications, which we're going to touch on, supplements, cosmetics, right? So think of your peptide night cream, right? And then synthetic compounds, meaning lab-made compounds that are designed to mimic naturally occurring peptides. So, recapping, remember, your body makes peptides naturally. Not the same thing as injecting a peptide you bought online is automatically safe.
So, as we talked about, we're all of a sudden hearing a lot more about peptides. And I think you and I would both agree that leading that conversation is the rise of GLP-1s, right? Your medications, your Ozempics, Mounjaro, Zepbound. We have talked about this on a podcast before. Vivian has talked about it pretty extensively. And I will say this is a no judgment zone. We work with people in our community who are on GLP-1s. We both work with private clients who are on GLP-1s for weight loss. But I do think that is what is kind of sparking the conversation, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think GLP-1s absolutely brought peptides into the mainstream. So GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. So these medications are peptide-based medications, and they are a hot topic, a big conversation. So Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, these weight loss drugs or diabetes medications, they are peptide-based medications. And they're powerful, they're effective, they work. They work by mimicking or activating pathways involved in appetite regulation, blood sugar control, and digestion. The key important thing here is that these medications, because this comes up a lot where people are asking very loosely, like, well, peptides, they're drugs. What about these drugs? It depends if we can call it a medication, a drug, or not. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, these are FDA-approved medications. Wegovy and Zepbound are FDA-approved for chronic weight management. Ozempic and Mounjaro are FDA-approved for type 2 diabetes. So these are true pharmaceuticals, medications. We need a prescription and doctor oversight in order to get them. I'm very curious to hear your take on this because I feel like there's a little bit of a shift of this peptide conversation and also muscle recovery and that side of it, not just the GLP-1 weight loss appetite so much anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say some of it is because now we know peptides through the GLP-1s. There is sort of this thought that, oh, we'll do all peptides aid in weight loss. And I think we would both say, no, they're, again, as we've talked about them, there are so many different kinds. They're different in so many different ways. But I think that's where the interest starts. And then I think we were seeing, a lot of talk from those GLP-1s about muscle preservation, about strength, how when you lose weight, if you're in a calorie deficit, you can tap into muscle for energy. This is why we talk about protein being so important. This is why we talk about strength training. Some estimates, there's a lot of scary stuff going around online about how much muscle you lose on the GLP-1s. When I was researching for this, I was looking at several studies, and there was a meta-analysis looking at a lot of different studies through the NIH, and it was showing about 25% of weight loss on GLP-1s was lean mass, right? So muscle mass. This is something the clients that I work with, I ask, and most of their doctors request that they continue to get DEXA scans so they can be aware of that and that they strength train, right? So that is how we counteract that. So that is why there's such a push from me, from other trainers of if you're on these, you have to be strength training. You have to be prioritizing your protein so you're not losing muscle. Muscle is our organ of longevity. Muscle is going to keep our bodies and our brains healthy for the long term. So it's so, so important. So I think that kind of tied into, well, there's got to be a peptide for muscle, right? And I will say, again, talking about peptides being around for a long time in the bodybuilding world, they've been talking about it and we hear a lot about growth hormone, right? So we're finding that some of these peptides signaling molecules for growth hormones. So the most common ones we hear about, BPC 157, it's probably the one I hear about talked about the most. We hear about faster tendon healing, again, those connective tissues, ligament repair, right? So not just muscle, but our tendons and ligaments that adapt a little slower. Reduce inflammation. Obviously, inflammation is a broad term and can get used in a negative way. It's not always a bad thing as we repair with muscle, but that it basically speeds up the healing process. We've also heard about it for gut health. Then there's CJC 1295. I can't wait for these to have like real names so we don't we don't have to say all the letters and numbers, but CJC 1225 or Ipamorelin. These are ones that we talk about specifically with that growth hormone. So there's also Sermorelin. I mean, even those are hard to say, right? But these are thought to stimulate the growth hormone release. So in the bodybuilding world and in the muscle, in the strength world, a lot of people are touting these as sort of the alternative to steroids, right? For many years, people in bodybuilding have been using steroids. We know they can have a lot of side effects. They're not always legal. They're not always safe. So this is supposedly the safe alternative. The growth hormone with that's when we see, an increase, or these are the, what we say are the benefits: increase in lean body mass, increase in water retention, body recomposition, or altering your body composition. However, what I would say for all of these on the strength training side is the evidence in humans is very, very limited. So we're seeing animal testing in rats, we're seeing, testing in the lab, but there is very limited evidence on the human side. So the good trainers out there, a lot of them are saying we need more research, but what we're seeing is promising. And I think all of that is true. And I don't discount anecdotal evidence where people say, oh, I just feel like I recover better on this peptide. Or, we see, especially with women, as we age, we're naturally losing muscle, right? So this is being touted as sort of to counteract that, right? The solution for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are feeling good. So I don't discount that people are feeling better. I do think the benefits are a bit overstated for the amount of research that is actually out there. But more research needs to be done. And again, as we're going to talk about, it can't be something that you just order off the black market on the internet. You need to be talking to your healthcare provider. The other one that I didn't mention that also is common is the TB 500, also touted for tissue repair, cell migration, wound healing, which I actually think the research on that it will be interesting to see, on the medical side, how that comes about. So I think there is a lot of promising research. Right now, it's pretty limited in humans. And I will say, where we have the strongest evidence, if we were to make a chart of what actually does increase lean mass, improve body composition, body recomposition, are the things that we talk about, right? Strength training, lifting heavy enough load to actually stimulate that muscle growth, proper nutrition, as Vivian talks about all the time in the BAC, hydration, sleep, recovery, rest, all of those things that are pretty boring in the grand scheme of things. They're not as sexy as some fun thing you could just inject and have all the benefits of the world. But if we were to make a chart, all of those things are at the top, then these peptides with limited evidence are more at the bottom. So I'm excited to see what newer research comes out of it, but right now we just don't have a ton on the human side.
That's so interesting. I have, of course, both of us, we've been spending a lot of time researching peptides, trying to understand peptides. And there are two things that you touched on that I think are really important. And with aging, muscle loss, changes in body composition, and we know from a research standpoint that peptide production naturally declines as we age. And I also think this is absolutely driving this interest in peptides, particularly amongst perimenopausal, menopausal women. And I think a lot of industries and businesses are very much trying to target these women who are struggling to put on muscle that maybe it was easier 10 years ago and now it feels harder, or the weight loss feels tougher. It's difficult to regulate appetite compared to the past. And so I do think there's a big shift too when it comes to peptides and who they're being targeted at. And definitely seeing this a lot in middle-aged women. And peptides, I think something that both of us, I think, want to make clear is they are powerful. They do work. But it's really important to know where we are getting them from. And also, we have, to your point, different bodies of evidence for different peptides. So a lot of the peptides that you mentioned, research done mostly on animal studies, really promising, really cool. And it's a really strong area of interest right now. So I think we should be seeing more things coming out in the research world from it. But right now, we're still also just experimenting. We just don't know a lot versus GLP ones, the medications, the Ozempic, Mounjaro situation. We do actually have clinical trials, human data on those. So I know we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. So I will hold on. But I think there's something else that you touched on around peptides. And as you're talking about wound healing, I'm talking about digestion, blood sugar control, appetite regulation. You're talking about bone density, muscle, all of the things. There's a question that comes up a lot, and I wonder if you've experienced this, but are all peptides the same? And I'm curious to hear your take, because the way that sometimes people ask me, like, do I need peptides? And I'm getting the vibe that it's like peptides are one thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious what your take is, because I think that's a common misconception that any peptide will work for anything, that there's one peptide.
Yeah. And I think, like collagen and our GLP-1s are such a great example of that, of like, like you just said, we know we lose collagen as we age. We know we see that in our skin. We know we see that in our bodies. So of course, since I'm losing it naturally as I age, of course I want to buy it and put it in my body. We know we lose muscle strength and bone density with age. Of course, a peptide's going to help with that. And I think the weight loss is another one. There is this assumption that all peptides aid in weight loss, but that's just not the case. They're all different. I have a client who sees a doctor for different peptides, and she's doing it the right way. She's getting the scans. But her doctor has a saying of like, oh, that's a different peptide, or there's a peptide for that, which I do really appreciate, of like, no, that one's not going to help with this. But if you're interested in that, we can talk about this. I think there's a lot going on there, but it is sort of a way to say, like, there's not a one size fits all when it comes to peptides.
The way I like to describe it is the equivalent of asking or saying, hi, I want medications for what's wrong, right? And I like to think of chemotherapy and ibuprofen, or to your point of collagen and GLP-1, completely different things, completely different mechanisms. They do entirely different things. And again, thinking of the pharmaceutical example, chemotherapy and ibuprofen. Yeah, they're both medicines.
Right.
But just because they're medicines, it does not make them the same.
Yeah.
You do not want to take chemotherapy for your headache, nor would you want to take ibuprofen for cancer treatment. They do not do the same things at all. They are different. Yes, they're medications. And so when we think about peptides, I think the question needs to be the same, not just, I'm interested in peptides. That's the equivalent of saying, I'm interested in medications.
Right.
What are your concerns? And I think that's in my blog, and I'm going to say it here because I think it's important. I think the first question to ask yourself is, and eventually your doctor, what are the concerns? What is it that you're struggling with? Is it weight? Is it recovery? Is it something else? This is my concern. This is the thing that I feel like I'm struggling with. Okay. Is there peptide therapy for that? Let me go ask a credentialed healthcare provider to make sure that if I am interested in a specific type of peptide therapy for the specific concern that I have, that I am getting it from a reputable and safe source.
I love that example of the chemotherapy and ibuprofen, because it just shows the range, right? And when you think of it, when you go to anybody, somebody comes to me as a trainer, they don't just say, I'm interested in exercise. I mean, I love when they do, because I'm like, great, let's do everything. But they say, these are my goals. This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I would like to change. This is what I would like to develop: consistency, muscle mass, all of the things. And yes, I, as the expert, can say, these are the things I think you shouldn't be thinking on. But at the end of the day, I want to know why they are there. And I would say you probably would say the same when you get a patient in nutrition, right? You're going to go through the long list of things. It's not just going to be like, okay, here's your nutrition, here's your fitness. It is very similar and just as important in your peptide journey, if you will, or if you are someone who is considering peptides. And I would say I also am, and I think you do this, I know you do this on the food side, would start with, okay, let's talk about what you're already doing or not doing, and how can we adjust those things, lifestyle, before we start trying to add in all of the extra things. We are very sympathetic to, because we get this a lot with women, especially women in those perimenopause or menopause years, of saying like, I'm doing all of the things, and they're listing off the exercise, the strength training, the cardio, the nutrition, the protein, the fiber, and I'm still not seeing the results or feeling the way I would like to. Of course, we want to help with that. And that may be a conversation with your doctor about a peptide. But we also want to make sure that all of the other things are happening as well. So I love that I'm not just interested in medication. I'm not just interested in peptides.
Yeah.
What am I really looking for? So that's a great segue into the different types of peptides and where we get them.
A common question, I think I alluded to this earlier in the conversation, right? Are peptides drugs? Are they medications? Are they supplements? And the answer to that is yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it's confusing. Yes, it can be a supplement. It can also be a drug or a medication. This is where things get concerning. So I like to think of 3 categories when it comes to peptides. Number 1, you have your FDA-approved peptide medications. So think of insulin, think of the Wegovy, the Ozempic, the Mounjaro, the Zepbound. Those are FDA-approved. They are the most regulated medications that we have. They are the most regulated. They have human evidence to back their safety and efficacy. We have a good understanding of their risk profile. Number 2, we have compounded peptides. And I like to think of these as middle of the road. So some peptides, not all, some peptides can actually be prepared by compounding pharmacies under physician supervision. A lot of the compounded peptides are not FDA approved. Compounded peptides do not often have the human data that an FDA approved medication would have. But still, it's compounded. There are some rules and regulations in place to make sure that you are getting a high quality product. Things are tested for safety, and also we have the physician oversight and supervision. So this is, in my opinion, that middle of the road. Compounded peptides kind of sit somewhere between the FDA-approved medications and the final category, which we're going to talk about, which are the research-only products that are sold online. Research-only peptides is what I like to call the internet mystery vial. And I don't know about you, but I don't like the idea of I'm going to inject a mystery vial into my body. Don't love it.
Yeah.
These products are often labeled for research purposes only or straight up not for human consumption. And yes, I have seen them being sold literally with the sticker that says not for human consumption. And it's like, oh, but it's fine. Look at me and my greased body. And that's concerning.
Yeah.
So these products are often marketed online. You will see them again as research compounds, wellness products, performance enhancers, anti-aging peptides. And this is where you got to be careful. This is a lot of what the content creator, the influencer with absolutely no credential, but maybe a quote unquote ideal body is selling. And these are not made by a compounding pharmacy. These are not FDA approved for anything. And this is where things can get really messy. You truly don't know what you're getting. And we can only hope that you're getting whatever they say that you're supposed to be getting. We hope that you're not getting them in too much amounts, too little amounts, or any amount. There's just so much uncertainty and unsafety. There's also risks of cross-contamination that, from my take, this is the category to avoid. If you are interested in peptides, you should be having a conversation with a healthcare provider. Can you get something prescribed, maximum safety profile, or should we look into a compounded peptide for your specific needs? And we have still some oversight, still some physician involvement. The research, the more casually selling a vial online and you could just have it shipped to your house and inject whatever into your body, I'd be cautious about that.
Yeah, I feel like it is, and we've seen this or we've heard this. People think, well, if they're selling it, if somebody's selling it, it must be safe, right? And that is not always the case. We talk about this a lot in in the supplement industry in general is just there's a severe lack of oversight. That's why we talk a lot about making sure that things are third-party tested, and in this case, that you are getting it from a reputable source. On a very benign level, you just might not be getting what you think you're getting, right? You may be injecting some water, but you paid a lot of money for it. On a scarier level, you might be injecting something that you really don't want in your body or could have some potential side effects. So I appreciate that breakdown because I think there is a lot of confusion. So we've talked about, the different types, how we're getting them, what they do. And then on the podcast, there is something I always close the show with, which is, where are you today? And so sometimes with the guests, that is, where are you in your fitness journey, or where are you in your nutrition journey? And I would love to know from you as a dietitian, and I'll answer the question as well. Where are you today with the peptide conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think peptides are powerful. I think peptide therapy can be very helpful. I just think it's very important that this is stuff that we're putting into our bodies. These are signaling molecules. They have some power and potential, right? Bossy little gremlins. So let's make sure that we're having the conversation with a healthcare provider so that we are getting the product that we're hoping to get, right? That we have a safe and effective product to treat the concerns that we have. So by no means am I against peptide therapy, like we talked about, GLP One medications. Many of my patients and clients and members in our community are on them, and I love it for them because these are individuals who were doing all of the things and were struggling, and they just needed that additional support, and that's great. But definitely where I get concerned, and I am so not on board, is the research only mystery vial and just somebody random on the internet being like, use my code and then look like me if you inject this. Not into it.
Yep. Well, I would say I'm very much in a similar place as you with that, where I do think they are powerful, and I think peptides are exciting, right? We are seeing newer research, as we have with GLP-1s over the last several years. But again, proceed with caution and don't neglect the basics. So I've had clients in the past or people who've said, I started taking this peptide and all of a sudden X, Y, and Z happened. And then we realized that they started taking the peptide and then it was recommended to them to also start strength training, up your protein, get your fiber, and they're doing all the other things. So is it the peptide or is it the basics that we do know that we have strong human data to support? So, I would argue the latter, but it could be a combination of both. So I do think it's exciting what we're seeing on the performance side and on, muscle preservation, muscle development, the athletic side for athletes. I think there's something there and we're seeing it. And again, people in the bodybuilding world have been talking about it for, a longer period of time than this current conversation. But again, I'm hesitant to tout all the benefits when there's not a lot of human data and when, again, people are just selling it off of Instagram with no credentials and no oversight. So again, if you're interested in it, I think you should talk to your healthcare provider. And again, as I say with my GLP-1 clients, it's not a one and done conversation with your healthcare provider. There should be some follow-up. And with the GLP-1 clients that I train, they do regular DEXA scans, and they also are doing follow-ups where they're talking with their doctor about what they're feeling and how, the results that they're experiencing and any potential side effects. So it's not just I went to a doctor, I got the prescription, now I'm done, but also making sure that there's some follow-up involved. But I do think it's exciting. I think we're going to hear a lot more about it. I'm very curious to see, especially in the population that we deal with a lot, women in our 40s, 50s, beyond, who are seeing that natural decline and doing all the right things. Are we going to see some promising benefits to combat that while we're lifting heavy and eating our protein, getting our fiber, and doing all the things? So exciting. Proceed with caution.
Yeah. Love it.
Well, thank you so much, Vivian. I do want to add that over in the BodyFit Athletic Club, which is our private community, we're having these conversations all the time. So Vivian and I go live every single week. One or both of us is doing a live stream where we're answering your questions, or we're covering a topic like this that you're hearing a lot about, we're hearing a lot about. So we'd love to have you join us over there. Make sure that you are subscribed and following us in all the places. And we hope to see you for our next Be Where You Are Today podcast. Thank you, Vivian, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Also, quick reminder that there's a whole playlist on my YouTube channel of past Be Where You Are Today podcasts, and you can find them wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Amy, just reminding you to show up, keep moving, and be where you are today.